Lu Fan started walking towards Professor Gu and with a calm look asked her what important matter Vice Principal Zhao wanted to discuss with him, as he didn't understand why she was telling him this right before the evaluation of the new students. Professor Gu, who had one hand on her waist, turned her head towards him and while watching him slowly approach, simply began to smile and remain silent in thought. She turned away from him, started to walk away and with a smile explained that once he arrived at Vice Principal Zhao's office, he would find out. He started walking behind her, began to follow her, and with a confused look, he started wondering what Zhao wanted to talk about. Two students who were in front of them began to converse with each other. One of them started smiling and explained to his friend that today another expert from the Qingyun class had made a new evaluation. The other student turned his head towards him and with a smile asked if he was talking about number 73 Hong. He also added that he already knew this. Some time later, they went outside, and Professor Gu, who was walking in front of him, slightly turned her head back and with a smile asked if Zhao's words mattered much to him. Lu Fan closed his eyes and with a forced smile, explained to her that lately he hadn't been in the classroom or in the secret realm. Now he didn't even understand what his classmates were saying. Professor Gu started to climb the stairs, and while she had one hand resting on the railing, she extended the other towards the sky and explained to Lu Fan that all of this was because of him. He and Hongwu had made a challenge where they bet points. Thanks to this, all the new students realized that competing by betting could earn them points. Everyone called this new evaluation. Upon hearing this, Lu Fan couldn't help but be surprised and open-mouthed at the same time. He began to look at Professor Gu and asked her what this new evaluation was about. With a smile, she explained to him that occasionally new students had fights. Those who won accumulated more and more points, while those who lost couldn't even afford to eat in the academy's cafeteria. He asked her what the students meant by number 73 Hongwu. Several minutes later, they entered the academy. In the hallway was Hongwu, holding a mop with both hands and mopping the floor. He couldn't help but start crying. He couldn't believe he was doing this. Professor Gu closed her eyes, started pointing at Hongwu with her finger, and explained to Lu Fan that taking his duel with Hongwu as a reference and using Hongwu's strength as a measure, he was 100 Hongs while Hongwu was 1 Hong. Now he was helping to clean the academy. At least he could earn some points to avoid starving. Lu Fan, who was walking beside her, started looking at Hongwu with a confused look and couldn't help but wonder how he had lost all his points. Several minutes later, they arrived at Zhao's office. Professor Gu turned her body towards Lu Fan, began to look him in the eyes and with a smile asked him to enter quickly as he was waiting for him. Lu Fan began to look at the door with a serious expression and responded to her with an understood. Lu Fan grabbed the doorknob, started to open it, peeked out a bit, and asked Zhao if he was looking for him. Upon hearing his voice, Zhao began to look towards the door and upon seeing that it was Lu Fan, he asked him to come in quickly. Zhao, who had both hands resting on the table, began to look at him and with a smile explained that before his admission, Professor Gu had promised him a spot in the national test, which now had been confirmed to be moved up. Lu Fan entered his office, approached the table, and remained silent. Zhao explained that this edition of the national test was originally going to be held in 5 months in Jinyu City, Tazi country. But now suddenly, the host country Tazi had moved up the date by 2 months and also announced this year's participants. The eldest son of the Jin family named Jin Chenghan was expected to reach level 60 and complete his transformation within a month. Lu Fan slightly turned his head to one side, started staring intently at Zhao with a serious look, and understood that Tazi country wanted to start the national test immediately after his third transformation. Zhao got angry, clenched his fist, hit the table hard, started looking at Lu Fan with a furious gaze and explained that this was true. He also added that in other countries, most participants took part in national tests on their second attempt. According to him, this time the winner was going to be Kim Sung-han. Lu Fan put his hand under his chin, started looking at Zhao and thought that the third and second changes were not just differences in level. Every time one changed profession, new characteristics were activated which greatly affected strength. He couldn't believe Jin was using these dirty tricks again. Zhao placed a hand on the table, stood up, closed his eyes and explained that he deeply regretted the unfair situation that had arisen regarding the promise they had made earlier. He turned his head towards him and with a serious look explained that in 2 months at most he had to reach level 30 and make the second profession transfer. In the national test, he would have to fight against a group of experts level 50 or higher, which was deadly. He approached Lu Fan, put his hand on his shoulder, and explained that in all previous editions of the national test, the Dragon Kingdom had always outperformed others and achieved victory. This time, the Dragon Kingdom was especially being targeted by other countries, so now they had even less time to prepare. With a lost look, Lu Fan started staring at the ground and remained silent. Zhao asked him if he still wanted to participate in the national test. He started looking at the ground, and he caught Zhao's attention. Then, he raised his head, began pointing to himself with his thumb, and with a smile, explained to him that this was the opportunity for him to enter the elite of experts in the Dragon Kingdom. After saying this, he decided to participate. Not only was he going to participate but also wanted to win. Zhao started staring at Lu Fan and remained silent. He closed his eyes and upon seeing that he had made a decision, began smiling and decided to bet on him. He approached him again, put his hand back on his shoulder, looked into his eyes, and asked him to perform well in the new student evaluation. Lu Fan began to smile, thinking that this was going to be a tough job for Zhao. The next day, the new student evaluation conference arrived. All the new students went into a hall, and Zhao stepped onto the stage, placing both hands on the lectern. He explained that everyone should consciously follow the rules. Then he decided to announce this year's evaluation criteria for new students. He extended his hand backward and used a remote control to display a system window showing a bracket called 2vs2 Arena. The first place would award 5,000 points per person, second place would award 3,000 points per person, and third place would award 2,000 points per person. Zhao began to look at the students and revealed to them that this year's evaluation would be in teams of 2 in a combat in the arena. Upon seeing this, all the new students were somewhat shocked. They started talking among themselves. Upon realizing that the evaluation was in teams of 2, some thought they were doomed. One student asked his friend to team up, promising they would win. But his friend declined since both of them were healers. Qin Q approached Lu Fan. She closed her eyes and with a smile explained to him that fortunately, the team did not require more than 5 people. Lu Fan turned his head back and, with a smile, explained to her that the ant did not have a combat profession, so they had exactly 2 teams. While everyone was talking among themselves, Zhao called their attention and with a serious look explained that he knew many people did not have the concept of a team. But it was still not too late to form one. This afternoon the first round would begin and tomorrow night the top 100 teams would be decided. Teams of 2 interested in participating could register now with Professor Gu. After saying this, he decided to end the meeting. Once the meeting ended, Jianying went outside. While she was waiting she saw them. She called their attention and asked them to come over. Lu Fan and Qin Q started approaching her. With one hand holding the magic staff, she closed her eyes and greeted her pleasantly with the other hand while smiling warmly at her. Lu Fan, who had both hands in his pants pockets, started to smile and greeted her as well. At that moment, a student with purple hair appeared behind her. He put his hand on his forehead, closed his eyes, and with a smile introduced himself as the double swordsman number 7. Since the entrance ceremony, he had been paying attention to her in this new student evaluation. He hoped she could honor him by joining his team. He was sure they could win. Just before he could finish the sentence, Jianying refused to form a team with him. Her words were like a rock of disappointment that fell on his head. Xiao Man also arrived. Now that everyone was here, she decided it was time to look for Professor Gu to register. Looking to the side, she saw a student crying. Seeing this, she asked the others why he was crying. Qin Q closed her eyes and explained to the others that the new students wanted Jianying to join their team. But she knew that Jianying wasn't going to leave their small team. Lu Fan started looking at them and with a smile decided to team up with Qin Q, while Jianying would form a team with Xiao Man. The next day at the new student evaluation in the arena, the preliminary round of Longdu Academy began. Someone who was fighting summoned a dragon, and upon seeing this, the entire audience went wild. The student ordered the dragon to use sweep, which allowed it to swing its large tail, causing damage to targets in a fan-shaped area. Upon hearing this command, the dragon forcefully swung its tail, striking their opponent and sending his body flying backward. This person was none other than Chen. He gathered momentum, jumped, drew his dagger, and began advancing towards his rival. Seeing this, the purple-haired student couldn't help but start sweating and thinking that this was not good at all. He used the dragon strike, which allowed him to mobilize the energy of the dragon, delivering a powerful blow. He attacked the other student using the dagger, then he descended to the ground. The attack was so powerful that his dagger got stuck in the ground. And in this way, Chen Tianjai achieved 28 consecutive victories. He started walking through the arena. Several seconds later, the student's body fell to the ground. In front of him was the princess. While she had both hands on her waist, she began to look at him and with a smile congratulated him since they had 28 consecutive victories. With a few more, they would be able to enter the top 16. While holding the spear with one hand, Chen placed the other on his chest, bowed his head before her and thanked her. He raised his head and while keeping his hand over his chest, he started looking at the princess with a calm gaze and explained that their team had already reached position number 7. Now it depended on the upcoming duels. If they won, then they could face number 1. The princess, who had one hand resting on her waist, began to look at him with a cheerful gaze and, with a smile, explained that in a short time her brother named Kim Sung-han was going to come see her. At that time, she would introduce Chen, and to do this he would have to obtain the number 1 position. In this way he would be able to receive the promotion from her brother. Chen closed his eyes, clenched his fist and assured her not to worry as he was going to follow her instructions. While they were conversing, someone started approaching them and the announcer declared that the next match was about to begin. Upon hearing this, they both turned their heads towards one side. Their opponents were the team of Lu Fan and Jian Ying. He began to intertwine his hands and with a serious look started to approach them. She began to touch her hair with her hand and with a determined look also started to approach them. The crowd got excited as a duel between two Tamers was about to begin, and moreover, one was number 1 and the other was number 2. Seeing that their opponents were Lu Fan and Jian Ying, Chen couldn't help but be shocked. With a confused look, he began to wonder what was happening. The princess was in shock. With a look full of fear, she began to wonder what Lu Fan and Jian Ying were doing on the same team. Lu Fan started staring at them intently and remained silent. The day before, when the meeting ended, he approached her and with a smile decided that he and Qin Q would form a team, while Jian Ying and Xiao Man would form another team so that everyone could end up in a good position. But Qin Q told him this wasn't necessary. While she was holding the magic staff with both hands, she began to look at Lu Fan and asked him to team up with Jian Ying to get first place. This way they would continue being number 1 and number 2. Xiao Man, who was next to her, put her hands on her waist, closed her eyes and with a smile explained that she didn't want to drag them down from being the best either. Qin Q closed her eyes and with a pleasant smile asked him not to worry about them since she and Xiao Man were going to make an effort. Back in the present, Qin Q started waving at them with one hand, brought the other to her mouth, and with a smile asked Lu Fan to take first place. Xiao Man, who was next to her, simply remained silent and began to smile. Lu Fan started cracking his knuckles and with a grin asked Jian Ying if securing first place would be an issue. She took on an offensive stance and with a serious look told him that it wouldn't be a problem. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.